What's up, guys? Leslie Robbins here. The coronavirus pandemic shut down so many businesses, but one medical spa is here to stay and is bringing the magic back to its clients. Miss Julie, here we are at your one-stop shop for mind, body, soul, but things are way different than they used to be. We're masked up, 6 feet apart. How is this even possible in the beauty industry? Explain how your business has survived COVID-19.
Well, first off, welcome to Cala Bloom, formerly known as Aesthetica Medical Spa and Hydroption. Things have changed quite a bit. How did we survive? Wow. A little bit of luck and also a lot of communications with our clients.
Julie, you said welcome, but it's actually welcome back. Of course, I was here just prior to the pandemic closing down everything. I was here for the beauty aspect, for the hydroption aspect with the sports desk. Athletes get the IV often. COVID hit. The segment never aired. Now I'm excited to be back to show people what you guys were like before and that you're back and better than ever.
Oh, absolutely. Leslie, we relocated in February. We launched Hydroption in February, 1 month prior to COVID. And it was scary. It was scary for all of us.
Even when the pandemic was in full effect, everything was shut down. I'm on your email list, and you were sending out emails to your clients consistently, giving people updates on the business and sending out products if people needed it.
Well, our clients are like our family, Leslie, and I just felt like this is my other family that I need to take care of. And that's why it's so important that we have that communication.
They walk through the doors now. Your business is open. People can come in. What are the procedures? I should show my feet right now because when I came in, I had to put these over my shoes just as you have on your shoes. Everyone that comes in, we're wearing masks. Of course, we're 6 feet apart. What happens when people come in here? Because this business, it's all about personal connection and touching and being very close. So how does that happen in this space?
Well, we wanted to make sure that our space is safe and stress-free. That's one thing that's important for our clients. So first thing we did was when they come in and park, they would have to text us to make sure that the coast is clear. Once we know that the clinic is clear and our rooms are cleaned, we would text back to them and let them know that they can come by. And when they come up, we have them put on the booties, check their temperature, and also use hand sanitizers. As soon as that happens, we send them straight to the room. So there's no traffic. After the treatment, we also try to avoid traffic to make sure that, when they walk out, they walk straight out. We can check them out in the room. We can make their appointment in the room. And it's a stress-free visit.
Let's talk about when the clients are in the treatment rooms. You're doing very close-up treatments. How is this possible?
Well, we implement very strict safety measures. I'm actually wearing a triple layer mask, and we also have a face shield. And so we wash our hands prior to every client. We don gloves. We're very, very careful.
What has allowed you to reopen and maintain such a thriving business while so many other people have not?
Leslie, that's a great question. I have to say it's our loyal clients. They trust us. They know that I'm going to be safe and they're going to be well taken care of. And that's what brings them back. I'm a registered nurse. Medical spas are allowed to open under the guidelines of a medical director. And as a registered nurse, I'm able to perform the facials, the Botoxes, the fillers, injectables, laser treatments, and anything that we have under our service.
When you guys opened, what were some of the beauty treatments that people were craving to get done?
Leslie, would you believe I went through 10 vials of Botox?
Is that a lot?
Oh, huge, huge. I usually use, 1 vial a week or so. We went through 10 like that. We do a lot of grooming needs. Of course, there's another service that is highly popular and it's important at this time is IV therapy. And our sister company, Hydroption, they didn't experience any closure and they've been servicing the community and everybody's been very, very happy.
Oh, I know Hydroption. I know Nurse Israel. When I was here last time, I'm gonna go check in with him to see how things are going now.
That's awesome.
So Israel, Hydroption is the second part of this space. It's IV therapy. I was here back in March, right before the lockdown, but you guys never had to close your doors. Tell me about that.
We are a medical facility under the supervision of our physicians, our medical directors, that we have provided an essential treatments to our community here, to our clients, in helping them stay healthy, providing overall wellness, boosting the immune system through IV therapy, which is a more effective way of receiving these nutrients, these micronutrients, into one's body.
Now, when I was here, it was for my show, The Sports Desk, and I was looking into why athletes use IV treatments. Now it's a lot of people. How is it helping people?
Well, it falls down to the way it's received into the body. When you want to take something orally, your GI system or your intestines, your stomach, through the enzymes break down about 50% of what you consume, which only leaves about 50% available for your body to actually absorb. When you go through the IV route, you have 100% bioavailability. That means 100% of the nutrients that I infuse through the IV is available for your body to use. Does it absorb 100% of it? Not always, but in theory, it can absorb 100% of all those nutrients, which your body can now use more effectively.
How are you keeping yourself safe? How are you keeping the client safe?
We've implemented a lot of safety rules here. We do a lot of pre-screening. Once they clear that screening and they come to their appointment, which is only appointment-based, we accept no walk-ins. Then they go through a screening to actually enter the facility. Temperature check for fever. They don our nice little booties and they use hand sanitizers. And of course they have their mask. And then they come on back here into our IV lounge and we only take one person at a time unless they're in the same household. We wear a mask, our clients wear a mask. We wash our hands, we sanitize the treatment areas constantly. Always use gloves and all our equipment is sterile.
What do you offer, and has your menu changed now that COVID is here?
Our menu has changed just slightly. We had a name change just for the treatments, just to really emphasize what exactly your end goal is going to be. So our most popular one that has become popular now in this time, and actually very necessary, is our immune boosting hydration. We have a blend of vitamins and minerals in that bag of fluid, but our main components are the very powerful glutathione antioxidant, high dose vitamin C, and a dose of zinc. Those three combinations help boost that immune system, get it working at a more optimal level. It helps fight off anything that could potentially attack your body, give you a better fighting chance.
When I was here, I was a little bit under the weather. I had a pretty bad cold, and I felt like I was on top of the world the next day. So it really did make me feel better. But you're not saying, listen, if you have COVID, come get an IV treatment. It doesn't work like that.
It does not work like that. These IV treatments do not prevent you from getting COVID. It does not cure you from COVID. It just gives your body a better chance to fight off whatever virus, bacterial infection you may acquire. Getting the proper hydration does so many wonders for your skin. So you come here for your immune system boost and you walk out with a nice little glow because you're very hydrated.
This place is literally somewhere where you can go to look good and feel good.
That's correct. We try to tailor everything that we do here to help you bring the best version of you out.
What's up, guys? Leslie Robbins here, coming to you from Zamperini Field, the premier destination for aviation enthusiasts here in Torrance. Of course, it's home to a museum, flight school, and it's a base for private aircraft. But just like LAX, the coronavirus pandemic has changed the way this private airport does business. Rafael Herrera, you are the airport manager. So tell me, how has COVID-19 affected this airport? Obviously, it's not on such a grand scale like Los Angeles International Airport.
Yeah, so if you want to compare LAX to Torrance Airport, it's two separate airports. One, obviously, LAX is a commercial airport. Torrance Airport is not a commercial airport. We have more of a private general aviation aircraft that utilize this airport. The number of operations during the pandemic now with COVID, it has been more impactful for the commercial airports. I haven't seen those numbers. The numbers at LAX have been, close to 80, maybe even 90% during the worst part of the pandemic, probably back in April, May. The numbers that we saw during those months, it was more of a reduction of about 30%. Now we see those numbers here in August and September to be a lot more than maybe around 15 to 20%. Obviously, we're not at 100% of what we were last year, but those numbers significantly have changed during the whole COVID because of, the travel, the leisure travel, and all the general aviation aircraft have been reduced, but not anything near what we saw in some of the airports like LAX or Burbank or Long Beach. During the time of the COVID lockdown, you have a lot of the general aviation private owner aircraft that didn't venture out to the airport during that time. Things are actually, the activity starting to pick up. I think people are a little kind of at ease to see what to expect or what kind of conditions they were. But now I think people are a little bit more in tune as far as what kind of parameters they need to follow, what kind of restrictions and stuff like that, in order for them to kind of venture out into the airport and utilize their private
As you just
aircraft.
said, expectations. So what can a person expect when they come here? Obviously, we're wearing masks right now. We're on the premises. We're standing 6 feet apart. What else do you have to adhere to when you're here at Zamperini Field? And it's people who own aircraft, it's guests as well, and it's visitors, because people like to come and go and watch the airplanes and the helicopters.
Right. We've instituted a lot of things into the airport, following CDC guidelines, following the LA County Health Department guidelines that we have in place. Obviously, just wearing the mask once you're inside the building. We have sanitation stations here in the airport. We recommend if you're not feeling well, that you do not enter the airport or enter the terminal building. And just following those guidelines, we've instituted in our office plexiglass to make sure that we're keeping our staff secure or safe during these times, and also we're protecting the public as well as they're visiting, because the airport, essentially, we never closed. We just always kept going because it's one of those essential needs. We're part of the transportation
So when the general
system.
public comes to Zamperini Field, where can they go? What places on the premises can they enjoy the experience?
Yeah, so please do come and enjoy the experience here at the airport. We certainly have obviously the terminal building here is kind of the introduction into the airport, kind of like the doors of the airport. It's here, the facility is open, it's available, it's open to the public. And we have a wonderful viewing deck that is available to the public as well. Terminal and our viewing deck has a great view of the airport. Come and see and check out, bring the kids, and just have a wonderful time. There's 4 flight schools here on the airport, and they are still continuing to adhere to COVID guidelines based on DC and from the LA County Health Department. They instituted those programs. They've been able to kind of maintain a steady number of operations based on their training. They've instituted programs where they wear masks if there's an instructor and there's a student, because it's kind of hard to do the 6 feet in between the cockpit. That's how they're managing. But I've seen them institute where they're cleaning their aircraft prior every time any
So
student
how has
changes.
COVID-19 affected charter flights?
Obviously, charter flights have reduced just since the beginning, like from April, May, June. But we're starting to see that they're coming back. And actually, they're coming back, I think, busier than it would be for some of the like LAX or the commercial
What I find
traffic.
remarkable is during this whole time, nothing closed down at this airport, except for the museum, which I'm going to talk to your boss about. But everything stayed open here.
That is correct. The flight schools, the maintenance shops were all part of the essential, the transportational system. So they were open. Unfortunately, the museum, of course, was not open. Obviously, them being a museum and the foot traffic and the public, that obviously was one of those businesses that was affected here at the airport.
Jerry Panilla, you are the facility operations manager, which basically means you are in charge of everything that goes down at Zamperini Field. One thing we love about this place, the Western Museum of Flight, it is closed because of COVID-19. Do you know how many people are still sad about this?
Yes, and we get daily requests, calls, people dropping by wanting to see the museum. It has been closed since the beginning of COVID. Temporarily, they are looking to come back on scene, and they're making preparations currently. I had spoken with the museum's director, and they're looking to get started back into the swing of things in the beginning to maybe mid-October. They're taking precautions. They're meeting CDC and LA County Health protocol in order to do that. They're really prepping their displays, making things socially distant, and we'll be opening up by appointment. It's a great place to visit. They have model airplanes, they have actual airplanes in there, a library. They have a lot of things that the committee likes to come and see.
Everyone is so excited for the reopening of the museum. How will people know when that's going to be?
They can visit WMOF.com. That's the Western Museum of Flight website. They will be posting information regarding their opening
We will
date.
be there at that reopening.
We look forward to seeing you here.
Hi there, I'm Christine Lee with Torrance City Cable, and today I'm giving you a virtual tour of the Torrance Art Museum's Gallery 1. Joining me is curator Josh Hashemzadeh. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So we're in a very unique situation because there is an exhibit in here that no one really can appreciate in person right now, right, Josh?
That is true. Yeah. Unfortunately, we're keeping our fingers crossed for the end of August, but right now this is the most in-depth look I think that we can have.
So we thought we could bring the exhibit to you, and Josh and I are keeping our 6 feet distance, but you're going to show me around to each of these pieces.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll go through and hopefully learn some more about the exhibition.
All right, let's get started. Right behind us is the first one that you want to show us, right?
Yeah, so Roy Thurston, so this is an artist that was coming to prominence in like the late 70s and going through the 90s, and so he's using actually like metal works that he fabricates in his studio, and this piece specifically is using silicone that's going over that, and the way that silicone is reflecting light really plays to how the light of this piece is displayed throughout the day. So Anna Sue Hoy, she's another LA artist, but she's looking at materials here. Again, you can see like the concrete and the ceramic cast. It plays to a long history of ceramics within Los Angeles, but these minimalist forms are also in reference to East Coast-based sculptor Richard Serra, who had done a list, like an essay that listed a bunch of verbs that talked about like how one approaches art making. And so for her, she's taking that and kind of thinking about, the actions behind sculpture, right? So this like engagement of producing work as almost like a lifestyle engagement that informs the work and allows us to see these things in more dynamic ways.
And when I was looking at this over here, I was starting to get a little hungry because, am I right? Is this frozen yogurt?
So it is based on frozen yogurt. The piece is actually done in marble. And so this piece by Alex Israel is called The Big Chill, which takes its name from a very prominent frozen yogurt establishment in LA, The Big Chill. And then it also plays to the movie, the 80s movie as well, The Big Chill. And so it's kind of this play on history within LA and also this idea of fiction kind of permeating the ways we live our lives.
And then you're going from colors to like white again. What's this?
So Lauren Halsey, she's working with, again, really sort of basic industrial materials in order to tell like local stories that maybe otherwise wouldn't exist in like, the concept of a museum or an institutional history. So working in South Central Los Angeles, she's taking these, almost like hieroglyphic-esque substrates, right, and like carving into them in the same way that pictographs or things like that have conveyed stories for thousands of years. So this is an artist that really is a master of illusion. So like all of these works, they look absolutely real, but when you start to look at them, you can kind of see on the back of that piece there, they are just canvases, and they're basic materials that are meant to emulate these kind of industrial substrates. And so for him, like thinking about the relationship between Japan and America, having grown up and exposed to like the Vietnam War, he's really thinking about like the way illusions kind of exist within a cityscape, and also like the idea of building something, I think in LA, that's so rooted in this kind of like development and sensationalism, that there's always this kind of like element of illusion to that as well, right? There's always like hopefulness of what something could be and the reality of what it actually is. And so I think like finding him kind of in the middle of those two things in a way that feels almost like still life or representative, but then also kind of like formal and abstract, I think is an interesting play.
And over here, am I seeing a bunch of ropes?
They are. So Claudia Carducci, she's working with bronze cast to create these ropes. And so she's also very invested in this kind of thinking of architecture, but sort of with like a feminist approach. So rethinking the way that a lot of these kind of archetypes of environment have been created predominantly from maybe like a male perspective, and kind of turning them on their head. So I always like looking at this piece almost like trophies, like like an old log cabin has those hunting trophies, kind of up on the wall. Here she's posing the same thing, but in a way that's maybe alluding to a more malleable sense of what those things could be, and how like interpretation on that can kind of remove its meaning or kind of play with that meaning. So Math Bass is an LA-based sculptor and painter, but I always like this piece because the bright colors, for one, and the shape of this sculpture in itself kind of refers back to maybe some of the like local things that you would see. So maybe like when you see a storefront close, right? They pull that gate in front.
I was gonna say it looks like the bars that you have outside windows or outside doors.
Exactly. So it's like it plays a little bit to that, but it also becomes this really kind of elegant and isolated form as well. And so kind of playing to how maybe someone interprets that imagery as something both maybe like banal, but then also beautiful, I think is an interesting contrast within this piece, and something that also kind of plays to that mid-century aesthetic that we talked about with Anna Sue Hoy and some of the other artists in the exhibition. So this is
that
kind
one
of
looks
like
totally different.
Polar opposite, right? So it's like still very simplistic forms, but here kind of playing to a history of sculpture, like self-leaning. So it's kind of a sculpture that's working for itself, and I always like the fact that too the silhouette of this kind of is reminiscent of overalls. So kind of like thinking about labor and the idea of the history of sculpture as a sort of masculine endeavor, and then thinking about how that can maybe be, examined and deassembled and stuff. So thinking about this as a sculpture in relationship to that, you see how different these things are, but really like reducing things to their most iconic representation, right? How you can derive meaning from form in a very sort of basic and visceral way. So this is actually an interactive piece by Juan Capistran. And so you have the image of a person laying on the ground, which in today's climate is a very charged symbol, but he's left it pretty ambiguous, right? You don't know if that person's doing well, if they've just passed out, if they're just taking a moment to lay down. But I think it's really playing to like our familiarity of these images and like the meanings that we throw onto something. And so if you flip them over, there is a quote that says, "Empire does not confront us like subject facing us, but that of an environment that is hostile to us." So thinking of really like how we're affected by the sort of systemic totality of everything around us, and how we derive meaning from that, and whether it's inflicted on ourselves or others, it's something that's really sort of prominent now, and I think has been for a long time. And so he really plays to that as a local LA resident, bringing that history. So Helen Pashkin is a very prominent LA artist that really rose to acclaim in the 1960s. So she's sort of a champion of the light and space movement, along with many others that you may know, Mary Corse, James Turrell, Robert Irwin. And so she's really playing with like translucent materials, and she's one of the early people to do this, and also really kind of set a paramount for female minimalists within Los Angeles. And so all of her pieces, there's kind of like this hidden element to it. And as you said, as you move around that piece, it kind of reveals things, and the more time you spend with it, or the more light is refracted through the objects, you start to find things kind of hidden within, and it creates this kind of abstract experience that is really dynamic to the way light plays with an object. And I think in California, there's no place better to play with natural light than here. So Aaron Sandness, he is a younger painter as well. He's based here, working with this piece with car enamel and paint. So this is actually based on the manufactured paint of a Pontiac. So thinking again of this kind of like local, almost like hot rod culture and this kind of Americana presence. And then you'll get these 4 triangles on each one of these X paintings that create that dynamic, sort of glossy X in the middle. And so those shapes, although they look just kind of geometric, and they are, they kind of reference, or they're meant to reference, you know, the folding of an American flag at ceremonies. And so he had lost a friend in the Iraq War. And so this is kind of paying tribute to that in a way that says, you know, like, we pay respect to that, but there's also this fascination of, like, you know, this Americana will to, like, just kind of keep going forward, kind of like, you know, pedal to the metal kind of thing, like within hot rod culture, that is both enticing but also detrimental. And I think navigating why we lie somewhere in the middle of that is something that's interesting to him, and something that these paintings continue to contemplate.
Then we go from a bold color to a more kind of
Yeah,
muted.
so Lynn Aldrich, she's working in LA for some time as well. Also really invested in, you know, readily available materials. So you'll recognize that all of these are rain gutters, you know, that you see on any suburban home. But they're painted and you know, dissected and cut and fabricated in ways that create a really kind of a, you know, organic shape. And this amalgamation of these materials, although kind of simple in their construction, one, start to develop a real complexity, and I think two, they kind of become a metaphor for LA's housing development too, in some ways, right? It's like this kind of organized and uniform development that kind of becomes chaotic in some ways, and in some ways kind of beautiful, but otherwise, you know, problematic. And so I think playing with that, you know, these objects, which again are really simple, can start to have real meaning and tell stories about a place that's unique and different from, you know, the way people may have approached sculpture on the East Coast and stuff at that time. So really kind of playing to a local environment here.
So these are rain gutters.
They are rain gutters, yeah. It's you know, you can make art, you know, with simple materials and generate, you know, I think great meaning out of that. So this is a piece by Sam Durant. So these are all taken off of like historical photos and documentations of protest posters. So taking something that's really existing, one in the streets and you know, engaged in a sort of civil rights discourse, he's presenting them as these, you know, larger than life light boxes that, you know, are reminiscent of the billboards and neon signs that you find on any boulevard or avenue here in LA. But really thinking about how these ideas of protest, these messages of civil rights can kind of be reinterpreted over time, and, you know, how there's a kind of fluidity to one of the messages, and then also you know, the presence that they have. And even, you know, the word, you know, you're on Indian land, like now today, is maybe looked at differently than it was then, and you know, so the way that language changes, I think, you know, he's advocating that civil rights kind of needs to make that kind of progression as well, and that these things are always adapting. It's not a static environment. So Laddie John Dill, this is a piece from the late 60s, and he's worked with neon early on to create almost like these sentences out of light. And for him, like, creating this meaning either, you know, vertically or horizontally, out of these materials that again relate to that light and space movement, were really like pivotal to his practice, and again helped shape the LA art scene in a way that was reflective of that environment. So all those neon signs that you see when you're, you know, looking for takeout and stuff, you know, you're so you know, exposed to them that they become synonymous in the way we think about, you know, how do you depict a city like Los Angeles or city in general. And I think, you know, Laddie John Dill using that as a fine art object or material was really an interesting approach at that time, and still is relevant today.
Well, thank you so much, Josh, for showing me
Yeah,
around.
thank you.
And thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you next time.